So, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. If you're joining us over on the Azurish Live Twitch.tv channel, thanks so much for joining us. Please do take part in the chat, get involved, ask any questions, and we'll see if we can get you some answers if needs be. And please don't forget to hit that follow button, and you can get notified next time we go live. Equally, if you're watching on catch up on YouTube, thanks again for joining us. If you could give us a subscribe and like the video, that would be awesome. Really is appreciated. Okay, so my next guest this week, he's got his roots in DevOps and cloud engineering. He is the CTO over at cloudskills.io, and he's a blogger, he's a vlogger, and he's an awesome training content creator. He's done some fine work across the training providers out there today. So on that note, it gives me huge pleasure to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With is Mr. Michael Levan. So, hey, Mike, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Good, man. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday indeed. Although this goes out on a Friday, so, don't get confused by that. But how's your week going, Mike? All good?
Oh, good, man. Can't
For a
complain.
Monday.
So far, so good. Yeah, it's about 12 p.m. by me right now, so we're just getting started for the week. But so far, so good. Can't complain.
No, cool. And yeah, as always, thanks so much for joining me on this episode there, Mike. I know, I know we've kind of crossed paths on a few of the social bits and pieces over the last few months, but you've been one of those guys that's been out there actively prevalent in the community, doing some fantastic work and fantastic things. And, you've made some really, bold decisions I've noticed over the last few months or so. But, before we get into all that great stuff, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction, bit of background and how you came to where you are today? That'd be cool.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, right now I'm the CTO and senior partner over at cloudskills.io. So we do a lot of, live boot camp style training, pre-recorded project focused courses, stuff like that. Really the mantra is, we're not selling information, we're selling transformation. So instead of just, getting people instead of just getting people certifications and, giving them the knowledge, we actually want them to do something with that knowledge. So, we're helping people get jobs, we're helping people train in a way that it's hands-on, real world based, so they can actually go out and get a job, versus just having the information and still not knowing what to do. Because I kind of see that a lot, where it's people get certifications and then it's they get a CI/CD pipeline thrown in front of them and kind of have no idea what to do. So, pretty much right now, I would say most of my time is, spent in cloud skills and stuff, of course, but I'm also doing a lot of consulting still.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I think about it is, if I'm going to be training people on, not only how to get a job, but how to get the skills to get a job, I need to be hands-on as well. So that's why I'm still
Sure.
consulting. So, I'm consulting about 20 hours a week with, a few different clients and stuff, typically one at a time. And it's pretty much in the AWS, DevOps, CI/CD, Terraform style space. So it's pretty much what I'm doing right now, half training and content, half consulting. So it's pretty much my sweet spot.
So that's going to keep you pretty busy, I'd imagine. Then, like you've alluded to there already, Mike. Keeping as a training content
Yeah.
creator, keeping up to speed with the latest happenings. It's got to be paramount, I guess. How are you finding that at the moment, Mike? In today's kind of landscape, how's that working out for you?
Yeah, you know what, the the answer might not be exactly what you're expecting. So, like you said, stuff is really just drastically changing all the time right now.
Mm.
A few years ago, 5, 10 years ago, the mantra was, "Hey, keep yourself up to speed every 2 to 5 years, and you'll be pretty good." And now the mantra is "Hey, keep yourself up to speed every 3 months, and you'll be good."
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
because
You're not wrong. Yeah,
yeah, it's just rapidly changing so much. I get the question all the time. It's "Hey, how do I break into DevOps? What do I learn?" There's no longer the, "Hey, you can be the Active Directory guy or gal," or, "Hey, you could be the active or the Exchange guy or gal," right? It's you got to know 8, 9, 10 different tools and platforms right now. So
mm.
how do you really do it? Well, for me, I think it's just the keeping up with the consulting and doing the things hands-on and doing the training. Creating content probably keeps me up to speed more than consulting does.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the companies that I work with, I do choose the companies that are startups, that are new, that are innovative. I'm not trying to work on 5, 10-year-old technology, But, creating content and seeing what people want and seeing what, the hot thing is right now,
Mhm.
that definitely keeps me up to speed for sure. But I definitely think that's one aspect of it. Like, in my opinion, to get to where I'm at right now, I wasn't just, labbing it up every day and, learning new things and reading blog posts and stuff like that. I kind of took it a little bit deeper. So I started to kind of learn more about like how the mind works, because you got to think about it. Like, what we're doing is 100% your mind. It's learning,
Mhm.
it's everything from a mental perspective. So to take it to the next level, I was like, how can I take my mind to the next level? How can I take my brain to the next level? So what I did was, without even kind of knowing it until I was in it, I dove really deep into, and I still do daily. Like, a lot of my studies are based on this. I dove really deep into cognitive science and psychology to like truly understand how to make your mind work at 100% efficiency without burning yourself out. Like, that was
Mhm.
really my goal. My goal was like, how do I, people say, oh, you need 2 to 3 years to learn this. I was like, how do I take 2 to 3 years, cut it into 6 months or less, and not burn myself out?
Mm.
So that's when, I really got into like the mantra of deep work. I got into the mantra of, not having, a million things going on, not having Slack open, not having email open, just really focusing on my work and focusing on my learning and stuff. So yeah, I would say right now, to be honest, like the way that I keep myself up to speed is by understanding the way that the mind works, as crazy as that may sound.
No, no, it doesn't sound crazy at all, to be honest, Mike. I think just hearing you say that kind of, it certainly resonates with me, because I think it's one of those things that there is so many directions you could go with your career. There is so many things you can do in tech. Like you say, in days gone by, sort of 5, 10 years ago, you could be labelled as one thing. Today, you are expected to a certain extent. I think expectations are there, rightly or wrongly. I don't know. Maybe it's a marketing thing for these cloud platforms that, look, everything's easy, everything is quick, everything's automated. And I certainly see that with customers I deal with. The expectation level for those people that want these services is, well, you just click a button, yeah, and it happens. And I always say, look, to click the button and make that happen, yeah, that's the easy part. But the bit that goes before it, and then the bit that goes after it, is the bit that you kind of need to know in detail. So, I mean, how do you make that differentiation between kind of the stuff that you need to know for whatever reason, and the stuff that you think you might need to know, or something that maybe is on the peripheral that kind of ticks your enjoyment factor, and maybe that's an interest on the side? I mean, do you
Yeah.
have differentiators like that, Mike, or how do you
Yeah.
manage that, I suppose?
So the one thing that I'll say is, I'm gonna I'm gonna answer this with two parts. I'm gonna give you the answer that everybody tells everybody all the time, right? Not everybody knows everything, but I always feel like there's never a follow up to that. People
Yeah,
are like, oh yeah, no, I don't need to know everything, but it's like, okay, well, what do I need to know?
yeah.
So here's the thing that everybody in the world has to understand: there are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of different platforms. There are a lot of different technologies. I mean, there's how many CI/CD platforms out there right now?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I feel like a
absolutely.
new one's popping up all the time. So the thing that I tell people is to not focus on the platform, focus on the technology. So don't go out there and be like, "Uh-oh, I got to learn 20 different CI/CD vendors, and I have to learn 6 different programming languages, and I have to learn configuration management and infrastructure as code, and I have to learn cloud, or rather I have to learn AWS, Azure, GCP." Don't think about it like that. Think about it like this: don't focus on the platform, focus on the technology. So let's take CI/CD for example. CI/CD is very straightforward in what it is. CI portion, you're building your code, you're testing your code, perhaps you're turning it into an artifact and you're getting it ready for deployment. Then you have continuous delivery and continuous deployment. One of them, you're manually going and clicking a button and it's going. The other one, a pull request happens, some code gets pushed up to whatever branch and then it gets deployed, right? Boom. Focus on that. Focus on what's actually happening in the technology. Then once you learn that, you could take that knowledge and go to any CI/CD platform you want. The only thing that you'll have to learn at that point is where the buttons are in the UI for the different CI/CD pipeline, or
Sure.
is this one using YAML deployments? Is this using something like a Jenkins file, or whatever the case may be. So really, like, the idea is don't focus on the platform, because the platform's always going to go away. Like, who cares about the platform? Focus on
Hmm.
the technology. The technology behind CI/CD has been around for a long time, like way before we started talking about CI/CD. The idea of building code and deploying that code has been around for X amount of years. Like I said, way before CI/CD was coined a thing.
Hmm.
So I would say if everybody focuses more on the technology and they focus less on the platform, they're going to be in a really solid spot. I mean, same thing with like programming and stuff. And I get the question all the time. Well, what language should I learn? Should I learn
Yeah.
Go? Should I learn Python? Should I learn PowerShell? This, that, whatever. Here's the thing: functions are functions, and variables are variables.
Yeah.
If you learn one, you can very easily go to another one. And there's going to be nuances and differences and stuff, but the core will still be there. So that's what I tell everybody: focus on the technology, don't focus on the platform.
Absolutely, and that's great advice. I think, yeah, certainly. I wish I'd had that advice sort of a year ago when I first started my little journey. Because I think it's just like a kid in a sweet shop. There are so many things to go and look at and play with, and
Yep.
I guess I'm not the only one in that boat. Not
No.
everybody has got the ability to kind of speak to somebody on Twitter and create a little video and get their own kind of one-to-one tuition in this kind of way, but.
Yep.
It's a really valid point, I think. One of the things I've seen, Mike, in terms of my background, in terms of the operational side of business and that kind of cloud journey for businesses at the moment, you alluded to the fact that things like CI/CD and publishing code, storing code in Git repos, publishing that up to separate branches for it to do something in pipeline, that's been around for a number of years. That's now infiltrating the ops side of the fence in terms of infrastructure as code. I mean, am I right in thinking there's not a black and white, clearly defined line there? There's still an element of, should you hear terminologies like everything as code and, stuff like that. Am I right in thinking there's not this nice, clearly defined line that's drawn to say, yes, that should be in code and no, that shouldn't? How do you manage those kind of day-to-day business requirements, those business services and workloads when somebody says, should I be using infrastructure as code or what? I mean, what's your take on that, Mike, at the moment?
Yeah. So I don't. This is just my opinion, but I don't think that there should be a line anymore. Like, I
Mm.
don't think that, over on this side, there's the people that write the code, and over on this side, there's the people that, click around a UI and deploy a server or something like that. Like, I don't think that there should be this line anymore. What I do believe is that at some point, I'm not saying that's going to happen tomorrow, but it's probably not going to take as long as people are imagining, that the standard role of a sysadmin will go away.
Hmm.
I started my career as a sysadmin, in help desk and stuff, and moving on to servers. And then I've also moved my career all the way over to being a developer and writing applications and stuff. And the one thing that I'm finding, all the time is like, you're never, well, I don't want to say never, but you're not going to find yourself in a situation anymore that, like, it's okay to just click around a UI and do something manually. And let's say you got to deploy 20 VMs, go in through the ESXi console or through the Hyper-V console and, deploy them one by one, give them the memory they need, the CPU, the hard disk resources, whatever. Like, that way of thinking needs to change, because
Yeah.
number one, doing things manually is like, it's very error prone. Like, I don't know about you, but like, if I do something 5 or 6 times manually, like, my mind just starts to wander because I'm
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
bored, right? And I accidentally choose, you know, one virtual CPU instead of four, and then that server is crashing because the application can't handle it, right? So all these things are very error prone. And the other thing too is like, going through a UI and stuff, nobody else knows what's happening or what's going on. Versus if it's in code, here's the configuration, this is what's happening, and this is what's going on. So I think that at some point, and I personally believe we're there already.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody's going to need to know how to write code. Like, I'm not saying you got to go out and build the next Twitter or something, but what I am saying is, like, you have to understand infrastructure as code, and you also have to understand some programming language like Python, Go, PowerShell, JavaScript, like whatever you want to choose is
Hmm.
fine. But obviously right now the hot thing is PowerShell, or I'm sorry, it's Python and
Yeah.
PowerShell. But
Yeah.
Python is the thing that is really ramping up everywhere, especially in Microsoft. Like they're hiring a ton of developers to work on C Python. You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on with Python. So I think that at some point, again, you're not going to have to write the next Twitter, but you're going to have to understand how to automate in a general purpose programming language. You're gonna have to understand infrastructure as code. Like this is the reality and this is the future. So if anybody's holding back from writing code, please stop, because you could find yourself without a job.
I suppose that's the advice I was expecting, because I think, just looking at the general landscape, and, I see a very, very small percentage, in the customers that I deal with, the colleagues, the community people that I speak with. But I think you've just summed it up. That does appear to be the situation at the moment, is that, I guess, if like me, you were one of those people sat in a nice sort of 9 to 5 operations role. You do a bit of scripting, you do a bit of PowerShell. You maybe got a big dump of PowerShell scripts in a OneNote somewhere, just collecting dust. I guess that's the norm for a lot of people still at the moment. So I suppose to turn that round, you're doing some fantastic things at the minute with cloud skills, with those training. What kind of people are you seeing pick up those courses at the minute, Mike, in terms of, do they come from that traditional ops background, or are they more leaning towards dev? I'm sure you've got a mix of both, but I mean, are you getting a bit of a general feel for the kinds of people that kind of looking to get these new skills?
Yeah, I would say 90% of the people that we have in the community are the systems administrators, the infrastructure pros, the old school guy or gals, the
Mm-hmm.
people that have been a sysadmin for a few years, and they're trying to make the leap.
Mm.
What we also see is, a lot of people will come in and be like, hey, I just graduated school, or hey, I'm transitioning a career, I want to get into DevOps.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, I don't think it's possible. Like DevOps and, that whole thing is not like a level 100 role. If you
Yeah.
see junior DevOps roles out there, pretty much just sysadmins, honestly. DevOps and how it's supposed to be practiced from a technology perspective is, very much a level 300, level 400. So
Mm.
I do recommend everybody to have experience in tech first. Should not just try to break out of college and go down, a DevOps route, because you're going to be very confused and very frustrated.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me on to another thought that I was having then, Mike, in terms of, these roles. Don't get me wrong. I think, there are a mix of different types of people, different aptitudes, different abilities out there, and I'm certainly no gatekeeper. I mean, I'm not there to say that my job is the job to have, but
Right.
I think one thing that I have is age, and with age comes experience, and I suppose the one thing that I've always kind of stood on to grow my own career is that experience. You learn something and you use that and apply that knowledge, and you build up to the next thing. And you do see, I think my observation at the minute is that things are becoming very well abstracted from
Yep.
what it was. Now, I question this, and not question it in a negative way, but I think, because I'm used to the way of building my own development and building my own skills, I think, how does somebody come in today's world, straight fresh into the IT industry, without necessarily having that, I'm talking that traditional, literally from a token ring perspective, from a networking perspective, knowing what the difference is between a hub and a switch, and, different storage types. And look, that kettle has got this plug on versus, you know what I'm saying? I come from that very much, if it's got a plug on it, you go to the IT department and it's their job to fix it.
Yeah.
It's probably immeasurable, the amount of experience that you gain from having come through those ranks. And like I say, I'm not a gatekeeper. I'm not saying that's the only way, but I sometimes wonder what it's like to jump into the IT industry today. Does that experience count for anything today, or
Yeah.
can we learn everything in the cloud space? Because I think there are definitely fantastic courses out there, and clearly things like networking and storage has changed significantly when it comes to cloud technology.
Yeah.
Where do you think that ground lies, Mike, in terms of experience? You saying that it's like level 3, level 400.
Sure.
Does that count for much, or can we learn it all afresh in cloud terminologies?
So I'll answer both the questions that I saw in there. One is the layer of abstraction of problem. Two, can people actually like learn it now in the cloud? So for the question about abstraction, I think abstraction is a huge problem. I think that because there is like people aren't coming into tech now dealing with the same problems that we did. Like you said,
Mm.
going into a server room and troubleshooting and figuring something out. I think because we're not doing that anymore, and ultimately because there's so many layers of abstraction, I think it's not requiring people to troubleshoot as much, and
Mm.
because of that, not requiring people to think as much. I can't tell you how many times I see like somebody, Google something and they go on Stack Overflow, and 5 minutes later, if they can't find the answer, they're like, "Well, looks like it can't be done." Like
Yeah.
there's no level of thinking anymore from what I'm seeing, and I think that's a really big problem. Like I think that even though there's a lot of abstraction right now and a lot of automation, you still have to think and like you still have to
Mm.
troubleshoot and you still have to learn and you still have to understand. I mean, I'm doing it every day. Like if I run into something that I wasn't expecting in my content, like in my demo code and stuff, or from a consulting perspective, like I am still using my troubleshooting skills that I learned years ago today. I'm still using those skills. So I think the layers of abstraction is definitely an issue. And the one thing that I will tell everybody is that you're gonna be one type of engineer. You're gonna be the type of engineer that goes on Stack Overflow, can't figure it out, and stays in a junior or mid-level role your entire career. Or you're gonna be somebody that goes in, troubleshoots, figures it out, says, "Oh, nobody found the issue already, but I'm gonna be able to find the issue,"
Mm.
and you go on to a senior principal level role. So yeah, I think that the abstraction is a big thing, and I think that it's requiring people to think less, but don't allow yourself to go into that mindset. Still know that you should be troubleshooting and thinking about things, and ultimately how to solve a problem. It's really what it comes down to. Where whether it's in code, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's on prem, there's one thing that we're all trying to do, which is solve a problem.
Mm.
In terms of learning, when you want to get into the cloud, there's a few things that you need to understand. You need to understand storage, you need to understand networking, you need to understand compute. I can't tell you how many times like people will try to break into the cloud and they have zero networking experience. Like
Mm.
if I try to explain to them what a CIDR is, or if I throw up a hexadecimal chart on a whiteboard and I say, let's turn this IP address into zeros and ones, less and less people are having the ability to do that.
Mm.
So, and this is a big problem. Like that, you need to understand network. Like you need to understand networking so much in
Yeah.
the cloud. I personally feel like networking in the cloud is more difficult than it is on prem. Like on
Mm.
prem, you're just connecting a WAN and a LAN. In the cloud, you're connecting this network to this service. You're going to this cloud. You're doing multi-cloud. Like it's way more complex in the cloud than it is on prem. But the same rules apply, right? Firewall rules are firewall rules, CIDRs are CIDRs, networks are networks, LANs and WANs are what they are. Um, so I do think that if you're in the cloud, you can learn those things, and you need to. It's not a question of should I, it's a question of you need to do it.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I would really like Azure and AWS to have, I don't even want to call it a fundamentals path, but more of like a networking path or something. Like Azure's really deep into the paths right now and all that, but
Mm.
you got to have like a networking path. You got to have a storage path. Like you got to understand those fundamentals. Those fundamentals aren't going away. If anything, they're just getting a little bit more difficult in the cloud because,
Mm.
you know, let's take like general storage, right? Like you'd have a SAN, and that SAN was to do one thing: store data. You had NTFS shares, and you had file shares, and people were connecting to them, and this and that, and the next thing, right? It's pretty much the general purpose of what we were doing. But now it's like you have an Azure storage account or you have an S3 bucket, and people need to connect to it. Oh, and by the way, these other services need to connect to it. No, Azure functions need to store logs in that Azure storage account, or AWS Lambda functions need to store logs or whatever into that S3 bucket. So things are getting more complex. Like people are like, oh, it's getting more abstracted, but it's getting more complex because you need these services to talk to other services. You need the networking there. You need the permissions there. You need IAM policies and roles and users and all that there. So there needs to be some sort of path from like a certification from a learning perspective that's going to teach those underlying core concepts, network, storage, and compute. Otherwise, everybody's going to be forever confused.
I think you can probably throw security in there as well, Mike.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
I think
yeah.
it's great hearing, speaking to somebody of a like mind there, because I think one of the things again I observed is coming. I've always been a little bit of a Microsoft fanboy through all of my career, so I think it's just come with building client PCs and servers. But like you say, you build these skills up over time, and it's great if you've got that just doing the job. It's doing the actual job is where you build up those skills, right the way from crimping, an RJ45 onto the end of a Cat5 wire and plugging it into a tester and seeing that you've got the wires right. You can't do that in the cloud anymore. Yeah. I'm glad that one's gone away. You're not wrong. But I think, moving that into as Microsoft have progressed with their cloud platforms over the years. So we look at it a decade ago when, BPOS moved into 365 and we started getting these, exchange mail migrations. Okay. And we knew 365 was building. I think what happened, my opinion again, is that Microsoft kind of built in all of these platforms, and we hear about shifting left all the time to build security into applications. And people like me and you that were helping customers build in and migrate and transition, all of a sudden, all of these different things and features start getting added. And all of a sudden you think, well, okay, now I'm not just migrating mail, but now I've got to make sure I've got all the security right. I can cope with that because I've done a bit of AD in the past. I've set up a few domain controllers and I know what group policy and security principles are all about. And then they start loading on the features. And now we've got a security and compliance center, and it grows and grows. So it's almost like that breaking point of you become this pseudo expert. You're expected to know these things because, Microsoft sell it as a SKU. So, can I just have one person? But, how do you feel about that balance? Do you see it the same as me, Mike, in terms that are we approaching a tipping point here of, like you say, maybe separating these out into very specific paths?
Yeah, so I think, again, taking the example of you could be the AD person or the exchange person, back in the day. And then there were the people that knew a little bit of everything and they were, the jack of all trades. Now, the jack of all trades is the new specialist. Yeah. Because you can't just know one thing. Like you can't just go and expect to get a job because you're the Azure VM guy or gal. Like that's not the way that it works anymore. Like the old generalist is now the new specialist. You must know a lot more now than you had to know before. That's for sure.
That's weird. Don't you think that's strange? Just in terms of how it's gone. Yeah. I agree with you, by the way. I 100% agree with you. And I think one of the things I'm doing at the moment with colleagues internally where I work is I suppose is helping other traditional groups of technologists adopt cloud principles and adopt, within their data. So it's networking teams. There are still obviously storage teams for other product vendors. I know I'm stuck in my, I'm very aware I'm stuck in my own little cloud, predominantly Microsoft bubble at the moment. But there are a myriad of other things going on out there, and they all require these deep skills and that experience. So I suppose, back to that question is in terms of how do new people into the industry learn these things? I'm not going to make any bones. It's an uphill struggle, I think. Sure. Is probably my way of looking at it at the moment. There's still a lot to learn. So I'm wondering, like, if you guys are seeing that over at Cloud Skills and the kind of courses you're putting together to kind of help people more than anything work through this myriad of hurdles.
Yeah, and you know what? I think at the end of the day, like, this is why I am so embedded into understanding the mind at this point, because you can't just like go at it with like, I'm going to lab 6 hours a day and I'm just going to learn all of these technologies. Like, it's just not feasible anymore. sure, like lab it up and have fun and play around with stuff. Like I do it all the time. I have like open source projects and stuff that I'm working on right now just because I enjoy it. And I'm doing different cool stuff, but like it's not feasible anymore to just go into it from an engineering perspective. You have to go into it from like how do I best learn perspective.
Mm.
Because really, I mean, it's not about how much you know anymore because we are at a point where you cannot know everything. You truly can't.
Hmm.
It's more about how do you learn those things. Like I don't care about when I'm hiring somebody, right? Like I don't care about do they know Kubernetes and do they know this, that, the next thing. I don't care about that. What I care about is no, you don't know it. Okay, great. How are you going to learn it?
Mm.
Like
Mm.
I don't want to, I don't want somebody labbing 10 hours a day to try to learn something for a job. I want somebody that could truly sit down and think to themselves, okay, I have this distraction. I have this going on at this point. I have this, that, the next thing. I know that I need X amount of time to myself, secluded, nothing else going on around me, no distractions, really being in a deep work state. How can I do this? How can I do it 1 to 2 hours a day and get up to speed? That's what I want to hear. Like,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, I don't want to hear that somebody knows everything. I want to hear the how. How am I going to learn it? How do I learn it? Because I can't know everything. So I have to be in a constant state of being okay with learning new things. How am I going to learn it? That's what I want to know. Because again, at the end of the day, you can't know everything right now. Everybody's focus should be more on how can I learn more efficiently, not how many technologies can I cram in a night.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well there, Michael. I think in terms of you simply can't. There's nobody in this earth, and I think as well. One of the things I recognise is when you are like you're doing that consultancy for various customers, you're working on a very specific area of the cloud platform. Potentially, you're not working on the entire cloud platform for any given project. You're looking at very specific requirements. So,
Sometimes, yeah,
yeah.
sometimes. I mean, sometimes I'm all over the place too. Like I'm working with a client right now that um, they're using IoT Core to pull in logs from an agent running on a server, and they're taking those logs and they're passing it through Kinesis, and then doing a whole bunch of Lambda functions and stuff.
Hmm.
Before this client, I never touched IoT Core or Kinesis,
Hmm.
but I was perfectly okay with taking on the project. Why? Because I know how to learn.
Mm.
Because I know in my head, it doesn't really matter if I know Kinesis or IoT Core or not. It just matters if I can put the time in to learn it, and in
Yeah.
an effective manner, not just cram it, but actually learn it. And I do all of that, by again, understanding my mind, going deep into cognitive science, knowing what I need to do to be focused, to be successful. So a
And
lot of my
yeah,
clients,
yeah.
I'll be hit up for a lot of different things. A lot of things are, Terraform and Python and AWS, and because people know that I know that stuff. But if anybody's ever like, hey, I want to implement this cloud service into my CI/CD pipeline, I'm never going to say no
Mm.
because I know that I'll learn it. I'll also tell the client, I'll be like, hey, listen, I never did it, but I'll do it. I'll learn it. Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. Don't worry. You don't have to hire somebody else to do it. And, everybody's starting to figure that out. Everybody's starting to be like, yeah, people are going to have to learn as they go. So,
Well, is that the new like you cast your mind back to what we came through in our careers? Is that we managed to pick up these troubleshooting skills from the physical world effectively, in plugging things in and moving things around and hitting the
yep,
problems and working through them. It like you say, it's just I suppose it's an aptitude to troubleshoot and I
yes,
guess what you're saying is that look, the cloud platform has got so many features, feature sets, technology, and
yeah,
capabilities that we're arguably are we not troubleshooting our way through a solution? Maybe, but we just know.
absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, the big thing about troubleshooting is this: troubleshooting by definition is being able to figure something out. And
Hmm.
that's what we're doing. We are all figuring it out as we go because there are thousands of cloud services. There's no way we're going to know all of them, nor there's no way that we're ever going to be put into a situation where there's a cloud service that somebody wants implemented that we haven't worked with before. We
Mm.
are absolutely going to be put into those situations, and most of us are put into those situations every day. But the most important thing is how you handle the situation. Do
Hmm.
you let resistance take over and let your mind race and be like, oh, I've never done this before, I'm going to screw this up, blah, blah, blah? Or do you sit down calmly, you remove all distractions, and you say, all right, let's get to it, and
Yeah.
you got to be in that mindset.
So what's your take the other way around then, Mike, in terms of, you've got a customer that wants to do something innovative, and potentially, I'm guessing, the breadth of capability in terms of cloud platform. Do you get pulled into any of those kind of roles? And do you those innovative kind of roles where you're, I guess, trying to find technical feature sets to develop and innovate a particular solution for like a business outcome now? How do you see that fitting into the role of this? All of a sudden you've got these cloud engineer type role where it's about maybe that infrastructure as code and CI/CD and building into a solution. What's your views on the other side, looking at it from an innovation point of view? Do you see any differences, or is it the same role, different type of role?
I mean, in terms of like innovation purely, innovation has always been, making things better, making a product, doing something different, doing something faster. So innovation, like by definition, it's not really different. We just have to, as engineers, instead of being innovative of, hey, I have a full data center of a bunch of ESXi boxes, I need them clustered up and be able to talk to wherever. Instead of doing that, now the innovation needs to become, okay, I have Azure and AWS, and these things need to be able to talk to each other and communicate with each other. How can I do it? So being innovative and stuff and thinking outside the box is like very important, I think, for any engineering role. Because if I want to hire somebody that I'm just going to tell them what to do and they're going to go and do it, I'll outsource it. You know what I mean? If I'm going to hire an engineer, I want them to be able to figure it out. Like I want them to be able to figure out a solution. Now, of course, that doesn't mean they can't ask for help and, go to their team or come to me or whatever. Of course, everything's a team. We're way past the days of, a programmer being in a room and we're sliding pizza underneath the door for him because he's never coming out. We're past that totally 100%. So teamwork is a very big thing, but being innovative is very big too. And I think the other thing too, and this is what a lot of engineers don't do and they must do, is the soft skills aspect, the business aspect. You need to understand why you're doing something. Don't just go into a problem and be like, oh, I'm going to write some Terraform code and I'm going to automate this. Understand why you're writing that Terraform code. Why does the business need this aspect of things to move faster? Why does the business need this aspect of things to be more efficient? The business side of things, once you understand the business side of things, it makes your job as an engineer much easier. Much easier. Right? Yeah. Writing code is writing code. Anybody could write code. But if you understand why you're doing something, it makes things much easier. And in my opinion, it makes things more fun because I actually have a goal. So
I think when you brought up that point, Mike, in terms of using that kind of psychology to understand how you learn and how you stay on top of current learnings, I mean, that when you said that struck a chord with me because I've always felt that this need, and I said it on a video not too long ago, actually, where in your brain you've got this left side, right side of your brain where you've got the one is more logical and methodical, the other one is more creative and imaginative. And my belief, just as a layperson looking at the cloud and the industry that we're in, if you've got a good balance of both those mixes, like you've got a really good, strong, methodical, logical, troubleshooting, skills orientated type of brain, and then you factor in that bit of creativity, surely the cloud platform is a place for people like that to flourish. Do you see that in the same way as I see it, Mike, or am I overcomplicating things?
Yeah, definitely, and it's something that like people could learn as well. So like by the time we turn 25, like our right frontal cortex is already developed. So it's almost like that's who you are, but that doesn't mean that's who you have to be. You could train yourself to be more innovative. You can train yourself to pretty much do anything that you want. Like I know this is a tech podcast, but the mind is like a wild place. Like if people take the time to learn a little bit about psychology and cognitive science, like you could rapidly change who you are and what you're doing. Like I get this question all the time, and I turned 29 on June 5th of this year, and like a few weeks ago, and people are always like, how have you done so much and how do you do so much? by 29. And it was like, my answer is always the same, like, because I didn't let the age thing hold me back. I wasn't like, oh, by the time I'm 30 or 35, I'm going to do this. Like, I dove really deep into understanding the mind, and more importantly, understanding my mind and how to get the most out of it in a short amount of time. And that's how I did it. Like, it wasn't, everybody's like, oh, you must like work 80 hours a week. Nope. You must, have studied all the time and every weekend. Nope. I literally just figured out my mind and how it worked. And the way I did that was learning more about cognitive science. And anybody can do that. Anybody can follow the same path. It's just a matter of breaking into it and doing it. Because the whole age thing and stuff is, in my opinion, it's a load of BS. Like, you don't have to like hit like, because you got to think about it, right? Like, what's the age? Like, is there something in tech where it's like, well, once you hit 35, now you know it all, or once you hit 45, now you know it all? No, it doesn't have anything to do with the age. It has to do with what you've done, and you can do as much as you want to do in the time frame that you want to do it in, as long as you have the ability to focus and understand the mind. It's not an age thing; it's a what you want to do thing.
I completely agree. I really do agree, because it's one of those. It's funny, isn't it, that in tech you get all of those kind of things floating around. That the seniority of people. And I'm a little bit older than you, Mike, but not that much older. But I definitely had the same kind of. Oh, I'm echoing back a bit there, Mike. I don't know if you want to turn your speakers down a bit. But
oh wait, sorry, say that again.
No, you were echoing back a little bit. It's all right though. Didn't come through too much.
Am I good now?
That's cool. I can not hear myself, which is always a good thing.
Perfect.
but it's cool that you say these things, because it is very much about, you come into the IT industry, and look, it's very, it's engineering, it's STEM, it's very much a male dominated arena. I'm a huge advocate, unfortunately, absolutely, and I think there are fantastic, female IT people out there, and I see hundreds of them, across the community now, and it's great to see that. So, as a father now of 3 young kids coming into this technology area, I'm absolutely trying to get them involved, because we've got such a lot today that we think we've all got to learn. But what does that set us up for going into the future? Which is why I asked you around, people new, straight out of college, coming into the industry, learning these skills for the first time. Maybe it's because the likes of me and you have got this baggage and this experience that, it's almost like you can't see the forest for the trees kind of thing. You think, oh, well, I've learned all of this. And I agree with you. It isn't about that necessarily. Yes, it helps. Of course it helps. Having any experience in anything will always help. But for those people coming in now, I think these cloud platforms and the training and learning materials that are out there can very much get them involved. But I think maybe it's up to the time served people to kind of give those hints and tips to the younger generation coming through now, to say, well, look, as you've pointed out, maybe Microsoft need to kind of maybe put an Azure networking path in there to get that focus on some of these key skills. I mean, have you ever drafted up a list of the kind of top 10 skill sets that maybe people need? Have you ever done anything like that? Maybe people need to kind of focus on?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty short. Like, if you're breaking into, let's say you're breaking into tech right now, right? And now bear in mind that the people like us who have the on-prem, exposure and all that stuff, and we've kind of been through it, and we've been through that old school troubleshooting. Because I mean, I've been in tech for a while. Like, I started interning and stuff when I was 18 or 19, so I've been in it for a bit. And the thing is that you and I and the people like us, we're going to phase out. In 40 years, this conversation probably isn't going to be going on anymore, where it's we were troubleshooting on premise of it's just going to be different. The new norm is going to be you just break into the cloud. Yeah. So the things that, you need to learn again is, security, like you said before, you corrected me before and added that in, which is absolutely 100%. Right. Then you need to know, networking. You need to know storage, and you need to know compute. And I think those are the things that everybody should understand, when they're coming in. Even if you're just going into the cloud, right? Let's say you graduate school or something, and you get a junior cloud engineer role, which is very plausible. It's something that's out there, and I do agree with it. I don't agree with the junior DevOps engineer thing, but I do agree with the junior cloud engineer and stuff, or just a cloud engineer. So if that then becomes the new entry level role, right, and the sysadmin role is phased out, then I think as long as you have and you understand networking, storage, compute, you're good. And you don't necessarily need an Azure track or an AWS track or a GCP track to do that. Like if you look at CompTIA, right, and you look at, Network Plus and you look at Storage Plus, right, those that's pretty much what you need, right? Like nowadays you could go for like CCNA and stuff if you want to, but for anybody who's taking Cisco certs right now or that have, if you notice, Cisco is now going towards a developer route. Like their DevNet stuff is kind of going into everything. There's in Cisco certs today, you're seeing programming, you're seeing source control and stuff. So again, you could just see that the world is moving in that direction. But right now, if you wanted to, you could go and like study for a general CCNA and stuff to like really understand networking. So yeah, I mean, but in 5 years that might be different. So
no, that's cool. It's fantastic advice. I think for anybody watching that's kind of just breaking in, or is young in terms of their cloud career. As try not to let the sheer volume of things that there are to learn kind of put you down. Like you say, you use that kind of mindset and just figure out how to learn. I think is what you were saying earlier, isn't it, Mike? Is figure out how you're going to find things out when you need to do them, I guess, not all at once.
That's how you succeed in this space. That's how you succeed as an engineer in the tech space. Understanding how to figure things out and understanding how to learn. This field is not about how much you know. This field is not about having X amount of years of Azure or X amount of years or this or that. And the industry is still very confused, right? Because when you go to and you apply to a job, they're like, well, how many years of experience do you have in this? Well, that's dumb, right? Let's not think about how many years of experience do you have in something. Let's think about how somebody can learn something. That's the biggest part. The biggest part is understanding how to learn it and understanding how to figure things out. I don't care if somebody has 6 months of experience or 20 years of experience. Somebody with 6 months of experience could be better at figuring things out than the person with 20 years of experience, and vice versa. Of course, we have to get off the mantra of, oh, you need to be in the tech space for X amount of years, because that's silly. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. If you're in help desk for 20 years, does that mean that you would be a better suited engineer in the cloud than versus the person that has 6 months of experience in the cloud? No, because the person with 20 years of help desk experience doesn't know anything about the cloud. So the whole years thing, that we got to push that aside at some point. A lot of organizations need to push that aside.
No, you're right. It's quite interesting, like you say, to see how hiring companies haven't necessarily moved. I mean, some have. Don't get me wrong. I've certainly seen a lot of job adverts where companies are forward thinking and they're thinking this. But yeah, you're right. I think there's definitely that kind of perception that the longer somebody is time served in a job. And look, I started my own cloud journey just over a year ago now. I mean, I say that in terms of actually full on concentrating and studying for all these other peripheral bits that you kind of need to learn, like we've alluded to, the DevOps piece, the infrastructure as code piece. They were there from experience, but I could have learnt those from scratch as a new person into the industry just as easily as I've gone to do it. And you're right, it comes down to, I think you do need to be that certain aptitude. You need to have that certain desire to want to learn. I mean, you alluded to it earlier, Mike, in terms of how you carve up your kind of week, and you're not doing 80-hour weeks, but let's face it, that there is still hard work that needs to be put into this. It's not like you're going to get it handed to you on a plate. There is still a significant amount of learning. I mean, one of the things that I've heard over the last sort of couple of years or so, just with this kind of tech intensity and this whole thing of, all of a sudden, especially over COVID, tech has kind of become front and center in a lot of businesses for obvious reasons. I mean, I've heard this work-learn life balance rather than this work-life balance that we all are familiar with.
Sure.
What's your take on that in terms of, how much time should we kind of focus on learning new skills versus doing our job and, getting on with the other pressures and things that we've got going on in our lives?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily chalk it up to time, and here's why. Let's say you take me, right? I'm very focused. I don't have any distractions going on. I'm in what I'm doing and I'm learning, right? And let's say I do that for an hour. And then let's say you take somebody else that like they're studying for 4 hours, but like they're looking at their phone and they have their Apple Watch on and they have email up and Slack up and stuff. I'm going to retain far more information in a distractless hour than somebody that's distracted will in 4 hours. Kind of just, that's just how it is. I'm going to retain more because I'm less distracted. So in terms of like how much time you should spend, I personally don't believe there's a right or wrong answer to this. If you could spend an hour a day, 45 minutes a day, I think 30 minutes is a little too short. If you can spend 45 minutes to an hour a day of being like having no distraction, no Apple Watch, no phone next to you, right? No nothing going on, no music, no TV in the background, no Slack. You're going to be in a real good dang spot versus the other person that's spending 10 hours a week in distracted study.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point. Yeah, I take that on board. I think that is a very good thing to point out. And I guess, do you see us having to learn new skills indefinitely into the future, or do you think there'll be a time? I mean, do you think there'll be a time where we hit the? I mean, what's the groundswell will come, and like you said earlier, there will be a new norm, and that level of norm is. We see things like de facto standards coming out of all of these things. Eventually, I mean, tech typically has that, where all of a sudden you see all this noise of lots of different things happening, but eventually there's 2 or 3 different ways of doing things. Do you see that, or do you think it's going to be like this indefinitely now?
Maybe that'll happen at some point, but it's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. The one thing that I'll tell people, especially right now, if you're thinking about a career in cloud engineering and DevOps, you have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy learning about this stuff, or you will fail. Now, don't get me wrong. You don't have to be like full-blown DevOps cloud engineer. That's all you're doing. That's all you're reading about. You never leave the house. You don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. You don't have a family. I'm not saying that. Don't do that, because that's silly. But what I'm saying is, if you don't enjoy learning about this stuff, right? And even like if you don't enjoy like learning it like while you're doing it on the job and stuff, if you don't enjoy it, go find something else to do, because you're going to be learning for a long time. So you have to enjoy it. Now, maybe DevOps isn't your thing. Maybe you're like, this CI/CD pipeline stuff is kind of boring. Go learn about cybersecurity. Go learn about blue teaming and red teaming and penetration testing and stuff. Maybe that's your thing. Or maybe your thing is more on the management side. Maybe you like enjoy reading more about like leadership and stuff like that. There's like 1,000,001 different things that you can do in tech. So it doesn't have to be cloud and DevOps and stuff. But what I will say is, whatever it is, enjoy it, because you're going to be learning new stuff for a long time. And if you don't enjoy it, you're going to be miserable. Now, again, I want to clarify. You do not have to spend 20 hours a day in front of your computer and have no life and, be, hustle, right? Because hustle is such a stupid thing to think to do. Like the hustle culture. I wish I could just get rid of all those people that talk and think like that. It's not good. But you do have to enjoy what you're doing, right? And I think, and the reason why I'm bringing up the hustle culture thing is, I think people get confused. There's a big difference between enjoying what you do and not having a life, right? Like for me, I enjoy what I do. I learn every day. I learn in my consulting. I learn while I'm creating content, and I enjoy it. I love learning about all this new stuff. But I also go and spend time with my son, and I work on my WRX, and I go to the beach, and I go on vacation, and I do these things. I enjoy those things too, right? And I'm speaking from experience, because there was a time in my life where I was too obsessed, right? It's all I was doing. I didn't have any other hobbies. I wasn't doing anything else outside of learning about this stuff, and it wasn't good. And I realized that, and I changed it. So, there's a big difference there, but you do have to enjoy what you do. Otherwise, you're going to be pretty miserable.
Yeah, I echo that, Mike. I think, I think even speaking about when people, we talk about people that maybe are a bit obsessed and spend those kind of, 80-hour weeks literally doing nothing but learning about tech. Look, I think it's fair to say that we've probably all been there at times.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's probably natural, just because of the kinds of people that tend to fall into tech is that they are more often than not naturally inquisitive, and you get hooked into something and you've got it. But you're right. It's just recognizing that, and you don't need it. It is a bad thing, because look, we've all got lives, we've got families, we've got other things that are healthy to be focused on, as well as the tech. But it's back to that work, learn, life balance. get it all into moderation,
Yeah.
isn't it? I suppose is just finding it right for you. But I completely echo that you need to enjoy it because, I don't know about you, Mike, but there are times where I'm trying to learn something for a customer project that I'm working on or something that I know I'm going to need in a few weeks' time, and it is hard. There are times where you're not enjoying the topic area. I mean,
Hmm.
do you get that on occasion, Mike? I mean, have you got
Yeah.
any advice over that? Because I struggle from time to time when you're
Sure.
involved with a particularly not very enlightening area of tech. You think, but I just need to get through this. I mean, how do you handle those kind of situations?
Yeah, it's actually a really good question. So here's the thing. You're going to enjoy what you do, but there are going to be nothing's ever going to be 100% enjoyable, right?
Mhm.
You're like, if I'm sitting there writing hundreds of lines of Terraform code to spin up spin up a cloud service and stuff, gets kind of boring after the fourth module because it's kind of all the same thing. I'm just
Yeah, yeah.
changing arguments, right? So it does get boring. And if I'm writing 1,000 lines of Python code, and it gets kind of boring, and I'm like, I kind of want to go do something else. So here's the mantra that I want everybody to think about. And I'm going to steal this from Cal Newport, by the way. Be so good they can't ignore you. And what I mean by that is, again, you're never going to do something in your life that is 100% enjoyable. Tech, raising kids, having a home, whatever. There's never going to be something where every day you wake up and you're like, oh boy, I can't wait to do this every day for the rest of my life. There's always going to be things that are going to be boring and frustrating and stuff.
Yep.
However, in your career, what you want to strive for is to be so good that they can't ignore you. Maybe you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't want to write this, or oh, I don't want to do this. But people are coming to you because they know you're good at it and they want you for that skill. And once you have something that you're so good that people can't ignore, that they're just banging on your door and they're like, we need this guy or girl in our environment, right? At that point, then you start to become more passionate about it, and you start to not really think too much about like the boring stuff because you're getting all these other things, right? Like you're
Mhm.
getting an award here, you're getting a Microsoft MVP award there, you're getting another client here, you're getting more money here, right? And all those things start to kind of collect, and that's what makes you passionate. Like being passionate about something and enjoying it over and over again isn't about finding the work that you just want to do all the time. It's about the collection of everything that's happening with that work.
That's a great answer. Yeah, and I didn't even preload that one. That was a fantastic answer. I think it is, isn't it? It's very much that just be grounded and live in reality, because there are
Yes.
very much things that, look, nobody's going to be happy all of the time doing things, but
Mhm.
it's like any job, I guess. There are elements of every job that you have to get through, but that's a great mantra to have. I'm probably going to try and steal that one from you now, Michael. I think it's true. It is true, though, because I think you're right. I think you get to the stage where you do the kind of work and you've spent so long, so much effort into learning these skills. Go and apply it. Go and apply that knowledge and do something that make people turn around and go, wow, that's really good work what you've done there.
Sure.
And that's, it does ignite that passion, I think. And like you say,
Yes.
it takes you off into various different ways. Then all of a sudden you might think that you're doing this day job, but now all of a sudden, because you've done something, and I think public facing stuff is also a fantastic platform to get involved with,
Yep.
because that kind of broadens your horizon so much, I think.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing too. It's like, look at J.K. Rowling, right?
mm,
Harry Potter books were probably really cool to write, but probably not all the time.
yeah,
Probably, a martini or a margarita sounded far better than writing another chapter. But there's a lot of
yeah,
reward that came to that because J.K. Rowling, so good they can't ignore you. Nobody could ignore Harry Potter, and still can't. People still love it,
hmm,
right? Same thing with raising a child. It's I don't know about you. I have a 4.5-year-old right now, but for the first 2 years, he did not like sleeping throughout the night, and
mm,
there wasn't a night where I was like, oh boy, I'm real excited to wake up 3 nights or 3 times in a row. This is going to be fun. No, but I did it because I was hopefully good at it, and I was,
mm.
how to do it. And, this was the path that I was going down and stuff. And, it's the same thing as your engineering career.
No, it's just brilliant. I mean, to be honest, Michael, this has been fantastic. It's quite an insightful chat, going through some of these things. And I guess, for people listening, they want to, I think from my point of view, just speaking to you now, Michael, it's great advice. It really is great advice. And it's resonated quite a lot with my own journey, my own career over the years. And I'd echo everything you said. At the end of the day, people are motivated for different reasons in work. Some people, it's not about those kind of rewards where it's the money, and which is brilliant, but everybody's got their own motivations for where they want to get. But I think using that mantra, I don't think you're going to go far wrong. Just that one simple line, just be so good that that nobody can ignore you, I think is a fantastic way of putting it. I mean, Mike, we've hit the hour mark now, Mike, and I'm sure, it's like anything I said, we'll start talking and we'll get there. But I mean, are there any other little bits and pieces you want to throw in now before we call it on this call?
Yeah, one thing that I do want to say, and I know people get heat for this all the time on social media, and that's fine. But the one thing that I will say is don't do it for the money, because you're just going to end up being miserable. The one thing that I could tell you is I've had anywhere from when I started my career of $50,000 a year salary to $250,000 a year. And the one thing that I could say is, when I was chasing the money, and I did, because I grew up poor, right? So I wanted money. When I was chasing the money, I was miserable compared to, now making good money, but enjoying what I'm doing. And I'm picking what I want to be doing. I'm picking the consulting projects that I want to work on. I'm picking the content that I want to create, right? So don't do it for the money. The money's just always going to come. If you get to a point where you are so good that they can't ignore you, the money's just going to be there. It is. Don't think that, I got to get this job because it's going to be a lot of money and stuff. Don't think that way, because I promise you, I can guarantee you, again, coming from somebody who grew up very poor to, owning a house and, having all this stuff, the money will come. You're going to have to be patient. But the money will come, and it's going to continue to come. And once you reach a point where you're like, I'm so good they can't ignore me, then you charge more. And then you charge more, and you do less, right? You're not working 80 hours a week. You're still working 40 hours a week, but you're making and charging so much money at that point where it's like you were working 80 hours a week. So the money will come and stuff. Please don't have that be your motivation. If that's your motivation, go be a day trader on Wall Street, right? But if your motivation is to have a successful career that you can enjoy and be good at, and the money's just gonna come, that's just gonna be an effect to all this, then that's the way you want to go.
Great advice, absolutely great advice, and to the point. I think it's quite candid advice as well, because sometimes it's hard to know what motivates people. Like you say,
Sure.
there are so many people out there that are doing things for the wrong reasons, and I echo the view that you've got to be passionate, you've got to enjoy it. Yeah, the money will come. It's not a bad career to have if you can get into it and stick with it. But yeah, don't go chasing it. I echo that, because you're right. I think you end up chasing the salary, and you end up very miserable, I think is probably fair to say. Yeah.
Sure.
Michael, this has been brilliant. I've loved it. It's an insightful chat we've had. We'll call it there. We've been going for over an hour now.
Awesome.
I'd like to thank you for joining me on this episode, Mike. It's been really good, and we'll no doubt catch up in the community at some point fairly soon.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Not at all. Nice to speak to you, Mike.
You too. Take care.